19 points with the LA Clippers when they played the Toronto
Raptors. Yes, that was my first game in Toronto, and maybe since high school, since I was like 16 years old. Master P. See, I know this guy. Master P, I know.
And he played for the Raptors.
Yep, he did. Played for Raptors a little bit.
He shares a record with you as well. And he played for the Raptors at the end of his career. So that's a connection to the Raptors.
Bunch of connections.
I know you play for OKC, but there's a lot of...
Congratulations. You are the NBA Kia MVP.
You're going to get me in trouble, so you have to slow down with this Raptor stuff.
The Toronto Raptors do not have a single dollar on their cap sheet for 2030. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has a player option in 2030. I like to think ahead about things. I wanted to think ahead about Luka's free agency with the Lakers. I wanted to think ahead about drafting Scottie Barnes, potentially trading for Brandon Ingram. And in this lab, I'm going to take you through why this is totally within the realm of possibilities, why the Raptors have to consider it, and why Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to Toronto would be a dream fit, regardless of what you have on the roster going forward. And I'll be very curious over the next few years if the Raptors tip their hand, because they did tip their hand in the summer of 2020 when they made every single indication that they were pitching for Giannis. And of course, there was a clear connection to Giannis, but he wasn't from Toronto. He wasn't from Hamilton. He wasn't from Canada, right? This is amazing. Yes. Nardwuar officially taking the bullet, Steve Ballmer style. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, last year I went on Player's Choice, and this is before it became very, very popular to, talk about Shai being this level of guard, right? And I said that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was arguably having the greatest guard season since Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. And people thought it was pretty crazy. And right now it doesn't seem really crazy to put him in those conversations. In fact, this is pretty much stated record now. Thinking Basketball now says that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just had one of the best guard seasons of all time. That's up there with D. Wade, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, all those guys. And he's from here. He's from here. I'm going to make a case. Let's make a case. So let's say, well, look at the cap sheet. Look at their cap sheet. Look at their situation. Look at our market. Look at their market. And then I'll take you through what the Raptors have to do to make this a no-brainer for Shai in 2030. Okay? So first and foremost, music off. How y'all doing? Y'all doing good? I really don't know why I'm blurry right now. Trying to figure it out here. Okay, so this is the Toronto Raptors cap sheet for 2030 summer. Scottie Barnes contract off. Top of the list. Emmanuel Quickley, a year before, he's an unrestricted free agent. Jakob Poeltl, his contract over. So there really isn't anything on your books. Now, you'll have to think very long and hard when you extend Grady, potentially Ochai, potentially Jacoby, that you're not extending them to figures that do not peak out your ability to keep a max contract slot open. Now, obviously, I don't expect the Raptors to walk into 2030 with $0 on their books. That's what's on their books right now. But there's a team that SGA plays for that actually has two max salaries on their books, including that $75 million player option that Shai can opt out of. They also have potentially that figure will go up to $60 million for Jalen Williams and $54 million for Chet Holmgren. So they do have some salaries committed, and they'll probably commit more, expecting, of course, that they will have the home court advantage. They're going to be able to sign him above their cap. They don't need to free up cap space to sign him. The Raptors do. So this is a calculated gamble. You're trying to build around Scottie Barnes right now. Some people believe Scottie's probably better served eventually as a championship number 2. He will be 27, 28 that summer. So him being 28, he'll be in his prime. You can make a pretty appealing offer to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, hey, come over and be the number one option, and you'll have like the best number two option in the NBA. That's certainly like one way this can go. I think like if you think about Scottie and you think about the player you expect him to become, the best version of that player, even like an MVP caliber version of that player. And I'm not saying he can't be like the number one option on a championship team. Don't get me wrong on that. I do think he's capable. But even the best possible version of Scottie is a dream fit next to Shai. They do completely different things and it all works. And Shai will be 32 that summer. And his game, at least based on the fact that he's a really good shooter, based on the fact that he's extremely long and positionally sound for his position, that he takes care of his body, his game is not going to fall off a cliff. His game is already built on craft as opposed to explosive athleticism. I'm not saying target Ja Morant or, Steve Francis. No, this is a player who will probably be very, very good into his mid 30s. This is, a lot of people say the Toronto Raptors are a small market team, but I want you to actually understand what the market means. Toronto is one of the fastest growing cities in North America. By the time Shai hits free agency, this number will be small. It is growing very fast. Some people are upset about it, but the truth is, Toronto's growing very, very fast for a reason. There's a huge population boom. There will be more people coming in. There will be a lot of investment. Hopefully, there's a financial resurgence. And that matters. It matters that your population size, apart from obviously the financial investments, the companies, etc., the off-court incentive for Shai to go from OKC to Toronto could be almost as large as his contract. Shai's a very marketable person. He's a very marketable player. And in Toronto, he would be even more so. It also helps that he plays for the 26th largest market. You're not trying to draw him away from LA. Not saying that you can't draw Shai away from LA. Maybe you can draw Shai from LA. But I'm saying you don't have to draw him from a huge market. You have to draw him from one of the smallest markets in North America to come to one of the largest growing markets in North America that he happens to already be from. And I think that this is a very no-brainer solution, right? Now, of course, there's some people who always say, well, what about the loyalty thing, right? What about the loyalty? Isn't Shai a really huge Kobe fan? Well, he can talk to Scottie Barnes about it. Scottie Barnes is a really huge Kobe fan too. They're both really big Kobe fans, but I think it's already worth noting Shai already played for another team. So the dream of starting and finishing your career with one team is already dead in the water. One. Two, Shai's a basketball historian. He has to know that Kobe almost left LA twice, almost went to Chicago. That almost happened. There was another trade as well that isn't as often talked about. So I don't think this is going to hold him back at all. And there's nothing left on the table. There's no, Giannis like, well, I got to deliver a championship to Milwaukee before I consider it stuff. He just delivered a championship. The work is already done. I know a few people in OKC. And for years now, since Shai launched himself into this level, there's a murmur around the Oklahoma City, Thunder organization and ultimately people who covered the team that Toronto is coming for this dude, that they're planning for this dude, and that they are going to make a very, very strong offer. Now, obviously, there's no guarantees here. He could look at the situation and say, you know what? I love my team. I love Chet. I love Jalen. I don't want to come. I don't want to come. Maybe I'll come when I'm 37. Maybe I'll come when I'm 38. Maybe I'll do that Steve Nash thing. But what can Toronto do? What can the Raptors do right now to make this a really simple thing for him? How can Toronto make itself the best possible situation going forward? Well, let's start with team success. This is a winner. He cares about winning, so build a winner. Make it easy for him to not have any doubts that he would have to come here and carry a lottery team. So you're going to have to make some deep playoff runs. That's very important. It's very important to build a winner because how you're perceived, how you're talked about, even like the concept of how often you're talked about sometimes comes down to winning. The Toronto Raptors don't play in America at all. Don't exist in America, actually. If you want to watch Scottie Barnes, RJ Barrett, and Emmanuel Quickley in America right now, you need League Pass. If you don't have League Pass, I'm sorry, you're shit out of luck. The Raptors had, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 0 nationally televised games last year. And that's not about to change because Scottie Barnes and Brandon Ingram are not Kawhi Leonard. They're not Vince Carter. They're not going to draw that type of crowd. So don't expect Christmas games. Don't expect national media coverage. Don't expect huge, fanfare. You're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to be a really good team that makes deep playoff runs. Number 2, develop. Not only do you have to be a winner, those young players like Colin Murray Boyles, Jacoby Walter, Grady Dick, Scottie Barnes, these guys, if they all stay, and it's very unlikely that all of them will stay, but let's just say most of them stay, part of them stay, or if the ones who don't stay, they become good enough that you trade for people who will stay. The point here is build a roster that he feels can grow with him. Now, he'll definitely be the oldest player in that group. He'll be older than Scottie. He'll be older than Grady. He'll be older than CMB. He'll be older than whoever the hell you draft over the next 4 years. But it would help tremendously, especially because he will absolutely be coming into the weaker conference, to have a situation where he can see a way for him to win while carrying less of a load. Because it is actually very important between the ages of 32 and 37 that you're not the same player anymore. It's not to say you're not a great player anymore. Many greats have continued to be very great between the ages of 32 and 37, 38. And players of this magnitude almost always remain great at that age. The difference here is what you can do during the regular season, how well you perform on back-to-backs, how many minutes you can play every single night, the load you can carry defensively. There's always an athletic regression, more injuries. I'm not saying you need to load manage Shai at that point. He takes great care of his body. He's probably, touch wood, going to have a very healthy career. That's not the point. What I'm saying is you got to make it easier for him by building a proper supporting cast, like a really proper supporting cast. You got to have a co-star. You got to have a great supporting cast. You got to have depth, and you got to have a future. You got to keep your future draft picks in tow. You got to keep, he's coming from a luxury yacht here, right? Sam Presti is like the best general manager in the league, period. There's no one close. It's not close. I'm not debating Danny Ainge. Masai Ujiri ain't here. Bobby Webster doesn't hold a candle. There's nobody. That matters. They have a great coach. He has a great trust in him. That matters. Brad Stevens, is doing a great job in Boston. But like when I look at Mark Daigneault, as a coach, I think of one of the bright young coaches in the NBA. That has to matter to a star player. So not only does Darko need to elevate himself among the league standing as one of the top coaches, someone people really want to play for. He already has that player first mentality and, the player, the guy who developed Devin Booker and Desmond Bane, he already has that development coach mentality. But in the deep sea playoffs, if I'm Shai and I'm looking at the situation and whoever's the coach, I got to trust that guy with my game 7. I got to trust that guy to make adjustments. Then there comes down to the organizational stability. Whoever is in charge, be it Bobby Webster, be it whoever replaces Bobby Webster, that person has to be a scrupulous person. That has to be a person that Shai knows or trusts, even if he doesn't have a personal connection to that guy. He has to have, and this is where it comes down to like Masai Ujiri, right? People really are very quick to blanket over Masai Ujiri and just say, well, he was overpaid, he was overrated, whatever. What he was stable, reputably stable, proven reputably stable. Your reputation precedes you in almost all walks of life. And when you have the reputation of being a mover and a shaker, a great scout, someone who is honest, these things matter when you're trying to recruit a star player of this magnitude. It really does matter. And I think it's going to matter that whoever assumes that position long term for the Raptors, have Shai's respect. Then it comes down to ownership. Ownership has to show over the next couple of years at least a willingness to not be cheap. The Raptors never go into the tax. OKC doesn't go into the tax. These are two teams that are notoriously cheap about going into the tax. They don't want to pay it. I think Shai is probably going to prefer a destination that is willing to open the pocketbooks to securing championships. Because in the end, when you're talking about a career that is going to be a Hall of Fame career, it is already a Hall of Fame career, in my humble opinion. This is a Hall of Fame career. This is a 3-time scoring champion, 3-time scoring champion, 2-time. He's averaged 30 points per game for 3 straight years, man. It's a 1-time league MVP, probably not his last MVP. This is a guy who has a great, Olympic record and a great international career with Team Canada. There's no chance in hell this is not a Hall of Fame career. And he didn't work this hard to come this far. If you're pitching Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, your pitch cannot be "you're from here, so come here." That will be stupid. No, your pitch has to be, we can add 2 more championships to your legacy. And here's how we're going to do it. So you need to keep your draft picks. You need to develop a second star. You need to develop a co-star that fits with him. You absolutely need to continue to grow your infrastructure, be a better situation. Look at what Desmond Bain was saying when he got to Orlando, but the facility in Orlando versus the facility over in, the facility in Memphis. Look at what Michael Porter Jr., amidst his string of crazy statements that he's made this offseason, look at what he was saying about the facility and the training facility in Brooklyn. Again, money. This is money. This is infrastructure. You may not want to hear this, but players like playing for the Clippers. Why? For the same reason that WNBA players like playing for the Mercury. There's something about it when your owner has deep pockets and they're willing to invest back into the players. The players can feel it. They can feel that their gym is the state of the art. They can feel that their training facility, their rehab facility, their medical staff, their shooting staff, their coaches are well paid. They can feel that. And that type of wealth can happen in Toronto because Rodgers is freaking wealthy, right? Momo's saying, Pen, you're forgetting Shai plays with all-world player in Williams. Well, what do you think Scottie Barnes is? Chopped liver? I prefer Scottie Barnes to Jalen Williams. I don't know how healthy Chet will be. I'm not suggesting that he'll be leaving a dumpster fire in OKC. That's why I'm saying you got to play your cards right. This isn't a situation like Giannis in Milwaukee, where, it's a small market star who has some misguided, omerta about playing with one franchise and a misguided dedication to a very unscrupulous and very corrupt front office that doesn't treat people right. And it's not the greatest situation, but his brothers will go to high school there. Like, this is not that situation. No, you're going to be taking him away from a very well-run team that has extremely good executive management, great coaching, and great success. But when it comes down to this, no one will hold it against Shai if he leaves for Toronto. It will never hurt his brand to do this. In fact, it will elevate his brand to a new level. He has to see the picture here too. If I'm Shai's agent, I'm pitching him very clearly. OKC is a small market. Small market stars are almost always forgotten. The ones we remember, quite frankly, most people remember Ewing more than they remember David Robinson. David Robinson was a better player. Most people remember Kobe more than they remember Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan was a better player. You want to play in a small market for your entire career, be prepared to be forgotten. That's how I would say it. Kawhi Leonard played in San Antonio. He became a bigger deal in Toronto. What I'll say is the number of people who actually follow your career, provided you are in a successful situation in both cases, it matters. It really matters. There are clearly, in a more global world that we live in now, maybe it doesn't matter as much, but it still matters. The media size, the market, like how many, Shai in New York right now would be the face of the NBA. But he's not the face of the NBA. You have to build on that. He's not the face of the NBA. Why is that? Build on it. Build on not like us. Build on the idea that you are still a Canadian in America. Build on it. Build on the fact that you are never going to be as respected as an OKC Thunder as you are as a Toronto Raptor. Build on it. Build on the fact that 7 million potentially people is much larger than the 2 million people you play in front of. Build on that. Build on the fact that we have a clearer path to an NBA championship for you in the Eastern Conference than you have with this team in the Western Conference. Wemby coming, bro. Cooper coming. Last I checked, both of the top 2 picks in last year's draft went to the West. Luka is in LA. That's an easy situation to build with. And the Lakers will build. They have new ownership. Hopefully, they're not as cheap as Genie Bus. And, there will be a ton of contenders. Jokic will possibly still be playing, or who knows? He might retire in 2 years. We don't really know about what Nikola Jokic is going to do. But the truth is, the Thunder will still be a good team. In my estimation, they'll still be a good team. You got to make a solid pitch for him to leave a really good situation that he's grown up in for the last 10 plus years. And the only way to do that is to leverage what you have working for you. A, weaker conference. B, bigger market. C, clearer path to championships if you have the right pitch. And D, home. You have home. It'll always be an advantage for the Raptors to pitch Shai. You'll always get the sit-down meeting. You'll always have his interest. Being able to play out your last 5-6 years in front of your homeboys and family and old high school teachers, this matters, man. This matters. Look at how much playing for Toronto matters to RJ Barrett. Look at how much playing in Canada, even though he's not from Toronto, means to Chris Boucher or meant to Chris Boucher. You got to build it up. And to that, I will say, if this dude does come to Toronto, it will be the greatest free agency grab in this franchise's history by a landslide. It will probably, provided you keep Scottie Barnes and some semblance of a roster around, probably propel you to a couple of championships or at least a deep 3-4 championship runs. And it will probably usher in the greatest era of Raptors basketball you've ever seen in your life, with arguably a top 3 player in the NBA, flanked by what I think will be another top 5-6 player in the NBA. It could be, I don't know, LeBron and D Wade. That's how high I am on this situation. And I really hope that the Raptors play their cards right, because it will require things to go right. Scottie does have to develop. You do have to build that trust. You do have to win. You do have to be a good team. Don't bottom out. Don't think, oh, we'll just. So this is the 2 timeline approach. You're kind of doing what the Warriors tried to do with Wiseman and Curry, except your timeline includes a player that's not on your roster that you have to plan for anyway. You have to plan for him the way you planned for Giannis, except this time plan better and actually get the guy. It's important too. Okay, I want to go around Twitter, and I want to just check out what's been going on. What's been going on around Twitter? Is a late night hang. How are y'all doing? Okay, first of all, this is dope. Orich and Serge Ibaka, man, like one of my favorite young up-and-coming Raptors with one of my favorite Raptors. Also, by the way, are you keeping count? Do you know how many days there are until training camp? We are a week away from training camp. Media, we're on Monday, September 22nd. Media day is Monday, September 29th. We are 1 week away from Raptors hoops. And I got to tell you, this is the longest offseason of my life. This has felt very long. It has felt. To those who are keeping up with the WNBA, the Lynx won, the Aces lost. Asia Wilson just became a 4-time MVP, a very, very huge accomplishment. There are 3 NBA players who've done it, and prior to the age of 29, and one of them is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It is really elite company that she's in. Also, I'm making a pact, and I have a feeling this could backfire spectacularly. I just got my last haircut yesterday, and I'm not going to cut my hair again until the Raptors win 3 straight. Preseason counts, by the way. Wink, wink, wink. But if the Raptors somehow pull it apart and just have a disastrous year and follow that up with a tank year or something crazy happens, I might actually end up looking like the Undertaker because I won't be able to cut my hair for 2 years. So this is a put your money where your mouth is. It could be a really fun thing for us to sort of track, but anyways, I'm not cutting my hair until the Raptors win 3 straight. So yeah, get prepared for some pain, bro. Okay. Okay. Couple quick things. One, I really wanted to address this. So I said 2 of the most well-respected basketball analysts in the world over the last 3 days have made arguments that 1, Scottie Barnes is not top 25 defender in the NBA. Shout outs to Sam Vecini. And 2, that Scottie Barnes might become a hard to move contract if the Raptors fail to make the playoffs. Shout outs to Caitlin Cooper. So look, fandom aside, bias aside, I have a real stake in this because I think that there's a lot of false prophets in the space, and it's more directed to the former than the latter, and have a strong interest in watching them scramble to explain why they're so clearly wrong on Scottie, even after having 4 fucking years of tape, NBA tape, to understand him. So in year 2, amidst the struggles, I confidently stared into the camera and very boldly said Scottie is going to be an all-star and a superstar, and I followed that up by saying there's no logical world in which Doug Smith will be right about Scottie Barnes and I'll be wrong. And I stand on that. I really do. I stand on that. There ain't no chance in hell, okay, that Doug Smith is going to be right about Scottie Barnes and I'm going to be wrong. If you did not check out our WNBA video, shout outs to Lake Show Jerry. We had a really dope ass conversation, about the WNBA, what they're doing, what the Toronto Temple will mean to Toronto. It's going to be really great. As you can probably see, I've been posting a lot about the WNBA. It means a lot to me right now. Hang on. There was a post that I wanted to cover. Maybe I should address the 2 things. First, there's no chance in hell that Scottie is not a top 25 defender, first and foremost. Let's just make that clear. He is, at worst, a top 15 defender, at best, a top 6 defender. That is what the data says. That's what my eye test says, and that's what common sense says. If you're thinking that Walker Kessler and Giannis Antetokounmpo are better defenders at this point, quite frankly, Sam Vecini, missed me with that bullshit. Availability does matter too, right? Like it can't, right? Now, the point of Scottie becoming hard to move if the Raptors don't make the playoffs, obviously, Caitlin Cooper and Samson Folk had a really great episode, I think 2 days ago, on Raptors Republic, in which they talked about a lot of things: Grady, Jacoby, Scottie, BI, RJ, who should start. A couple of things I fundamentally disagreed with from that episode. One, the idea of starting Ochai. I really am not Ochai. I like Ochai. Starting him would be a massive mistake. One, he doesn't have a contract, so starting him sets you up for possibly having to overpay him. 2, I don't think his skill set is necessarily optimized with the starting unit. I think you need somebody. I think you need to pick between RJ and Jacoby, and I think the choice is probably made for you by the contracts. It's going to be RJ, and it's RJ's job to lose. To the point of, would Scottie become a hard to move contract if the Raptors don't make the playoffs? Of course not. No, NBA general managers are not as stupid as the people on TikTok. There's plenty of people, around the league who have a lot of quiet confidence in Scottie. Maybe they don't have the quiet confidence that I do, which is loud confidence that he's going to be a, playoff number 1 and he's going to be like a 23 point per game MVP type of guy. But they do believe that he's a solid value guy as a second option. And at $40 million, that's not a contract that's hard to move. The only thing that would make Scottie hard to move is if he had, a massive mega injury, like an injury that shakes his career. A career-altering injury would be the only thing that would make Scottie Barnes hard to move. He is the ultimate plug-and-play player. Scottie is a good player, but you guys overrate him. I mean, tomato, I could say you underrate him. So, who's to say? Okay. The best thing about Scott, this is something I wrote last night. I was just thinking about things, at 2 a.m. You know how you do. Anyone else up at like 2, 3 a.m. and just like, I got to write like half a page essay on the Toronto Raptors and the questions they have to answer. So these are some questions that the Raptors have to answer this season. So this is something I wrote. The best thing about the Raptors season is also the worst thing about the Raptors season. The one word, uncertainty. Who truly controls the offense? BI or Scottie? Who's the third option? RJ or IQ? Who rises as the first big off the bench? CMB, Mobo, or Sandro Mamukelashvili? Which wing has Darko's trust? Grady, Jacoby, or Ochai? Or someone else, quite frankly? Who falls out of the rotation early? Mobo, Shed, or Ochai? Which prospect is just way more ready to contribute than we realize? Ulrich, Battle, Elijah, or no one? Who is the player who nets us our inevitable trade deadline upgrade? IQ, RJ, both, or some guys, or some young guys? It's not lost on me that RJ is on all the packaging right now for season ticket stuff, but it's also not lost on me that when Emmanuel quickly signed his contract a year ago, a summer ago, the future is here. The future is now. So, interesting. I wonder if it was Masai Ujiri who was very, very pro IQ. We'll find out. So who is the player who nets us our inevitable thing? How poorly does the team have to start to signal a tank twist? Like, again, we broke down the season and we kind of went through the metrics, and 13 and 18, I think, was the bar we needed to hit in the first 31 games. But maybe internally the Raptors are like, if we're not 500 after 35 games or 36 games, we're pulling the plug. Like there's a strong incentive, right? Which wing makes an all-star team this year? Scottie, BI, or neither? Does IQ continue to handle point guard duties? Or are we moving him off the ball to function as the Timu version of Steph Curry that I described in the last video essay? How well does the team have to start to signal a major push to trade for another star? So, like, on the inverse of how poorly do you have to start, how well do you have to start to allow Bobby Webster to say, okay, let's put some draft picks on the table and let's get Lauri Markkanen, let's get Derek White? Do Ochai and RJ get extensions? They're extension eligible in a few weeks, so October, right? Was Jakob's extension meant to keep him here or add years of control for his next team? All right, still to be determined how he fits. Will RJ even keep his starting job? And if he doesn't, who takes it? Grady, Jacoby, or CMB? Is Scottie your starting 1, 2, 3, or 4? And I'm not talking defensively, I'm talking functionally. Which non-shooter figures out their jumper first? Mobo, Martin, Shed, or CMB? Or neither? None of them. And will Darko Rajakovic survive a tough start? Does Bobby Webster survive a season where the Raptors don't? Will the Raptors miss the playoffs? Or will his head be the first to roll? This season is all about uncertainty, but that's not always the worst thing. And I really do believe that. It's like uncertainty is cool at times, right? Now, obviously, people don't feel that way. There's a big difference between, a surprise and an accident. An accident is a surprise you didn't want. So, there's a lot of uncertainty going into next season. And I understand that some people maybe just aren't that juiced about for the season because they're like, what is the ceiling with a team like this, right? Oftentimes, I think a lot of fans probably get their excitement from their overall optimism about their star player. And I don't even think we can all agree who our star player is right now. Some people think it's RJ, some people think it's BI, some people swear it's Scottie. I think, again, watching the Minnesota Lynx today play basketball, the Stud Buds, Nafisa Collier, watching that team play basketball gives me a lot of hope for the Raptors. It's the weirdest thing, right? But this is a team game. No matter how much you want to reduce it to an individual's contributions, it really doesn't matter. It is a team game. And how well individual pieces fit together is ultimately what's going to create the team success. And I think Toronto will always support a hardworking winner. I think Toronto had, Caitlin Cooper mentioned this in the Samson Folk, the Raptors Republic thing, that the Raptors had the highest pickup point recorded in the last 12 years. That's effort. And that is the way the league is trending. Higher pickup points, more scram, more switches, longer wing defenders. The Raptors have, some very interesting lineup combinations they can throw out. We covered it. We talked about it in the last live, CMB plus Mobo plus Scottie, what an interesting lineup that would be with Brandon Ingram on the court. It's just like you have 4 guys who are 6'9", but they're all so different. They're 6'7" to 6'9", and functionally they're just completely different basketball players. Defensively, it helps you. Like, when the Raptors were trying this with Boucher, Precious, Dad, etc., they didn't have the talent level that they do now with BI, Scottie, right? Granted, at the time they had Scottie and Pascal, but I think current Scottie and current BI are better than rookie Scottie and, our version of Pascal at that time. And so, yeah, I think there's a world in which this works spectacularly well, and there's a world in which this is one of the most fun Raptor seasons of all time. There's also a world in which this culminates in a whole bunch of nothing. It culminates in a very disappointing play and out, in which you face a team like Indiana, Detroit, Miami, or something like that, and you just get bounced in the play-in, and it's the Chicago Bulls thing all over again, and you've cost yourself another chance at a lottery pick, and you have this super expensive roster. I think a lot of this will come down to the growth of Scottie, because none of this really works. Not even the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander thing really works if you don't have a co-star here, right? Phoenix Plays Ed said, Robert, what are the odds that Scottie gives 16-17 Kyle Lowry impact in his career? You mean, what are the odds that he has a single season that impactful? I would say it is 75% likely that he eclipses that season multiple times in his career. Multiple times. And that's not disrespect to Kyle. I really do think if Scottie sticks around for the long haul, he'll be the greatest Raptor of all time at the time he retires. And I do think that, versatility offensively and defensively is so underrated. There's really, too much of a honing in on points per game, 3-point percentage, etc. There was a post the other day of like players who could hit the 50, 40, 90 club. And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I could see Scottie Barnes averaging 50, 40. I don't know how he'll ever average 90% from the line, but 50, 40 is totally in the realm of possibilities. You just have to understand the size of him. You know what I mean? He has to want it. Like, at the end of the day, he has to want it. There's a thing about congruency, which is what I'll end this live on, really, is the concept of congruency is very much pressing in my mind right now. And this goes more into life stuff as well as basketball stuff, right? Most people aren't very congruent. You'll probably notice that I'm pretty damn congruent, right? Or maybe you don't think I'm that congruent, actually. But I'll tell you this: I make every effort to be congruent. If I'm not happy with something, I'll say I'm not happy. If I'm nervous about something, I'll say I'm nervous. If I say I'm anxious, I'm anxious. You don't have to second guess me. If I say I'm really excited today, you don't have to think that I'm putting on an act or I'm smoothing it over. If I tell you that I'm really sure about something, it means I'm really sure about it. Or if I tell you I'm totally uncertain about something, it probably means I'm uncertain about it. That comes down to congruency. I like to be congruent with myself, which means that, to me at least, the vulnerable moments, the outbursts, all that stuff, is just about it's a process of exploration through which you inevitably come to find who you really are, who because again, we talked about it in the shadow video, when we were talking about Scottie Barnes in the shadow, in which, you come to terms at some point with who you think you are versus who you really are. And just like, you ever dealt with someone who's really financially irresponsible, and you try to get them like all the literacy you can, like giving them books and literature and giving them lectures about how they won't be able to retire on time, but then you find out that they're still financially illiterate and they continue to waste their money. There's an incongruency there, right? Most people will just kind of appeal to the authority. They don't want to get in trouble, right? Children are deeply congruent. Adults are not. When your boss comes up to you and says, I need this report done Monday, you don't say, I don't feel like doing it, because you fear the judgment of being lazy, or you fear getting fired or falling out of favor with your boss when the next promotion comes up. So you nod, you say, yes. That's why you feel so drained sometimes when you come back from work, because you've had to put on this theatrical performance. I think the most interesting development happened last year with Scottie, and it's not really going to show up on the box score, but I promise you, 5 years from now, you'll be able to see it way more clearly. And that development was that he had a coach who dared him to become himself. Not some theatrical performer, not some curated bullshit version of who he's supposed to be. Take the word supposed to out and just express yourself exactly as you feel, exactly as you are. Remove the discomfort, remove the conflicts, remove all of that. Get one with yourself. And I think Scottie did. Again, everything I've heard about, his connection with his teammates got so much better. How he's able to lead got so much better. He became more of a voice. And really, this process happened the previous year. And I remember bringing it up very clearly in a live when Scottie Barnes hurt his hand, right? This was like we say, there's a pivot point in someone's life. This was the pivot point in his career for me. When he got hurt, and he had to watch his team, stumble to the finish line without him. He started to become a coach, right? He started to, he's always been vocal, but he's more like a hype vocal, right? He learned the consequence of not being able to communicate his thoughts. He learned the consequence of not being understood, right? And I think that that's really made him a better communicator. And I think that he is not only bought into becoming a better communicator for the sake of, pleasing the microphones, Micgate. He's not doing that to appease anybody. He's not doing it for fear of what will people say about me because I'm a Max player who mumbles into the microphone. Rather, I think somehow Darko, through massaging and, exploration and trial and error, has shown him the consequence of being a poor communicator. Last year, the Raptors defense took a monumental step up with Scottie on the floor. Granted, against a lot of poor competition, but his role, if you attended any game, you could hear him barking out orders from the bench from like 45 rows away. He was the loudest person in the entire auditorium. He's communicating, even when he's not playing in the games where he's in street clothes. He's the one in the huddle. He's trying to break things down. You have given this guy who was kind of floating on the fringes of your roster, to be completely honest with you. Like, he was kind of like just around, right? I won't say he was a pariah, but he was certainly segmented off with like a group. It was like, okay, well, there's Precious and there's Scottie and there's Christian Coloco, but he wasn't like leading the group. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't take it as like, hey, we got to get this next stop. That wasn't him. That wasn't his voice. And frankly, removing Fred just meant there was no voice and Dennis took over. There's a lot of strong personalities on this team. There are enough strong personalities who've been the man in college, the man at their previous stop. Brandon Ingram's a former All-Star. But something that Brandon Ingram said that really caught my ear was, when he came, he said, Scottie's voice, that's the one everyone listens to. That's the one they all listen to. That's never been the case. I want to be clear about something. He wasn't the leader at Montverde. He'd always lead by example, and certainly, he's picking up full court, but he didn't know how to lead. Cade was leading. At Florida State, he was a leader, but he wasn't the leader. You very rarely saw him, kind of huddle up the guys in the middle of the court. What I'm watching here is a complete metamorphosis of an individual. And, again, people who've been around Scottie, people who know Scottie, people who coach Scottie would tell you he's always had this in him, but it doesn't express itself consistently, right? He now hopefully understands the consequences of losing his shit, losing his focus. He now understands that they'll go as I go. That is very important for a young player to understand. And so, you can harness in, you can hone in on the jump shot. You can hone in on the free throw percentage, the 3-point percentage. Bro, I've watched plenty of people shoot 30%, 31%, and then shoot like 38% for the rest of their career. This doesn't worry me. The only reason this would worry me is if I didn't believe in his work ethic, and I have zero questions about his work ethic. You can say like, well, he's not the burstiest guy. He's not going to beat this guy off a live dribble. Well, so what? Who's Jokic beating off a live dribble? Who's Nafisa Collier beating off a live dribble? Who's Alyssa Thomas beating off a live dribble? You understand the concept of being a switch all, play all, 5-position, guard all 5-position, defender, offensive player who can score from the mid post, has a 7'4" wingspan, 6'8", and can process the court 4 seconds, 3 seconds, or 2 plays ahead of everybody else on the court. I mean, this is an intangible value. This is like way more than anything I could say about, most players in the league. I mean, this is what you get with the top 10 type of guy. This is a top 10 guy. You can debate all day if he'll be a top 4 guy, top 3 guy, but I definitely think he'll top out at like a top 10 guy. Where he lands on that top 10 will come down to how good a shooter he becomes, how strong he becomes, how dominant he becomes, how much he wants to dominate games, how good a defender he tops out as. I mean, if he becomes a top 3 defender and a top 15 offensive player, that's basically a top 5 player. That's usually what it is. That's usually a top 5 player. So, I got a lot of hopes for Scottie this upcoming season. And again, not to think too far ahead, not to miss the forest and the trees, because obviously Scottie's my favorite player in the league, but Shai's not that far behind. I'm a very, very big Shai fan, and I love, the way that he commits himself to it. And the more Scottie grows as, I think, a leader and a franchise player, the more I realize he is the type of guy who'd be perfectly comfortable accommodating anybody else. And again, this kind of goes back to a video essay that I'm working on, where I kind of break down Scottie versus Nafisa Collier, who just happens to be one of my favorite female players. And the cool thing about Fee is she can accommodate any star. She is an MVP candidate. She finished second in MVP voting. She's a dominant scorer. She just, she's great on all 3 levels. She's an amazing player, but she allows other players to be great too. She allows other players to shine. And Scottie is just that perfect teammate. But don't take that for granted. Don't take, he's the perfect teammate, which means he's relegated to second option. Scottie Pippen, if that's what you think Scottie is, Scottie Pippen was the solo star for the Chicago Bulls the year and a half that Michael Jordan was out, and they were a 50-plus win team. So don't scoff at that. There are maybe 5 players in the entire NBA who can be number 1 scorers on a championship team. Okay. Everybody else is going to have to do it by committee. And maybe Scottie's going to be more like a Siakam level offensive player with better defense. And that's the top end. Maybe he never hits that apex. And quite frankly, with every passing year, it becomes less and less likely that he'll just morph into, like, I don't know, Kawhi Leonard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, like that level of player. But that doesn't mean that he can't be a top 10 player. I really do think he can be a top 10 player. And frankly, I'm aiming even higher than that. And so I think this season is very make or break for him. I think this is a, kind of announcement season for him. I suspect, and I know a little bit, but, I suspect he's worked very, very hard this offseason to shut a lot of people up. I think a lot of people have gotten a little too comfortable talking down on the Raptors and talking down on him. And, this is the first year of a max contract for him. And, something that I've kind of noticed with Scottie, and this is going right back to high school and college and the pros, is if you give him responsibility, he meets it. He takes that very seriously. If you say, Scottie Barnes, I need you to lead the scouting report on the OKC Thunder, you can bet your bottom dollar he's going to show up on time prepared for that. So if you're saying right now, Scottie Barnes, we need you to be our highest paid player and lead us to the playoffs, you can bet your bottom dollar he's going to do it, or he's going to, exhaust himself trying. So the motivation can't be higher, but obviously motivation doesn't put points on the board, right? So the skill level is going to have to get somewhere. The synergy with his teammates is going to have to get somewhere. But I'm really looking forward to this season. I can't wait. And obviously, I'll be very curious to see if the Raptors add extra contracts to their books going forward. And, shout outs to all of you, at almost 1 a.m., with us. We are 14 days away from Raptors basketball. We are 7 days away from Media Day. We will have you covered Media Day. We'll have you covered during preseason, training camp, interviews. We'll have you covered after every single game all year. Not a single game will be missed unless it is Pendant's time between February 27th and March 2nd. So if there's a game in there, I might miss a post game at that point. And starting 2 Sundays from now, we will start doing our members only Sunday show. This is not our members only Sunday show. This is a little preview of what that members only Sunday show is going to look like. Also, I did get a notification from YouTube that we did hit our bonus requirement. Like, I was a little bit worried. Some people, maybe YouTube will calculate it later or something like that. But yeah, I got the text from YouTube, and I was just like, yo, that's amazing. So I do want to give a really, really huge shout out to all of our members who made that possible. Thank you so very much. And if you're looking for, more thoughts on the game and stuff like that, I'll be on playback on Tuesday and I believe Friday. That should be fun. I'm doing the PCL on Friday evening at 7 o'clock on Player's Choice, which is a tournament in which I'll be debating 40-second debates. So, you know me, man. I'm a little bit long-winded. I'm going to have a lot of trouble with 40 seconds. So I'm going to have to learn to speak faster and condense my thoughts very much. I want to also apologize if I was a little bit blurry. I noticed on the screen that I looked a little bit blurry. And I know some people have mentioned like, yo, Rob, like, why are you out of focus so constantly? I don't know, man. I really don't know. StreamYard is really messing me up last couple of weeks. And it was a couple of weeks ago, I went on Jordan's show. And he uses something that's not StreamYard, like a different thing. And I couldn't believe how clear my camera looked on his stream. Like, I was like, oh my God, I'm like in crystal 4K. So, we'll see. Maybe StreamYard, being all buggy and weird makes me look in another direction. We'll see. Okay. Scottie has a Lowry Halliburton type of soul. Dope. Also, to our members, in case you don't know, if you've been a member for over a month, you have a membership chat. So you can actually use that whenever you want over that month. So you use it or you lose it. And, when we start doing games and stuff like that, you don't have to send a super chat anymore to get your comment read or above the line. And yeah, so that's really cool. Okay. Where does Scottie rank as a strength player in the NBA? You know what I'm realizing? Strength is so important. So important. Whether we're talking undersized guards who are strong, Fred VanVleet is super strong. That's really how he exists. Lowry was super strong. I think Scottie needs to get even stronger. If he can get into like the 95th percentile of strength, and he totally has the frame for it. We've seen him body centers. If he can get to that level, there really is nothing stopping him. Again, and I've been watching a lot of WNBA lately, and I mentioned this many times on the last few lives, that a lot of the WNBA stuff that I've been watching is kind of making me rethink like Scottie, IQ, RJ, and how these pieces all fit together. Because basketball is basketball. If you see it on a high school court, you see it on a EuroLeague court, if you have the proper brain to adjust and scale, it still works. And so, looking today like Courtney Williams, like she's 5'8", but she's so strong and she's so athletic. You know what I mean? So like that kind of gives me an impression of like, what if Immanuel quickly really, he mentioned last, I think it was during the exit interviews, that he was going to get a lot stronger this year. So it's like, okay, well, he hasn't been strong. Jacoby wasn't strong last year. Grady wasn't strong last year. If all these guys just come back stronger, how much of a difference does that make? And it's just like, it makes a huge difference, man. Offensively, you can bump. Defensively, you can hold your ground. It helps with rebounding. It helps with boxing out. It helps with finishing through contact. Man, strength is so important in the NBA. It's important. Oof. That's crazy. To be honest, this community went super toxic around the time Fred VanVleet left. It's when I walked away for a bit. Putting people on a screen through calls that don't deserve a mic, casuals talking like play in the NBA. Yeah, I think we had a moment for sure. And I'll be honest, it was much more than a moment. It was probably like a full 2 years where I'm not necessarily proud of how we did things. Like, there's a different way to do things. But this comes back to the congruency thing I was talking about, right? I think, and this is me, right? I've always believed this thing, and I don't know if you believe it, Boomstick, but I believe that the best thing you can do is the right thing, right? The second best thing you can do is the honest thing. And the worst thing you can do is, well, the third best thing you can do is nothing. And the fourth best thing you can do is lie, or the fake thing, right? So, I had a certain feeling about Fred VanVleet. I had a certain feeling about, the Jakob Poeltl trade. I had a certain feeling about what was going on with the fan base and Scottie Barnes. And I felt a very strong inclination to say it out loud. And I don't think I went about it the right way. In all of that, I think I got a lot of feedback from people, right? Good and bad. Some people were like, this is the greatest thing. This is what's needed because, the media is trying to tear down Scottie Barnes for being this, 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 and you are the only person who has his back. So there is an element of like fandom where how many lies can you sustain hearing about your favorite player, knowing that a lot of the stuff that's working behind the scenes is because of contracts and bullshit and politics. But then there's also like the fact that, you hear from people who aren't so pleased with what you're saying and how you're going about it, and you develop this reputation. And for me, it's very important to just express how I feel about things because I deal with it after, right? I don't watch videos from 3 years ago. I don't necessarily even want to, if I'm being honest, right? I really don't want to because I have a feeling I'll be like so embarrassed. I feel like I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe I yelled at a caller. What was I doing? I can't believe I got so mad at a comment. What was I doing? I can't believe I went back and forth for like 40, comments back and forth, telling a person that they're an idiot and that their dad should have used a condom. Like, come on now, right? But to me, it's like, it's a Scott Hall quote, and I'm sure it's like, actually, it's a quote that I heard in a 30 for 30 documentary with Scott Hall, who's a really big time wrestler who since has passed away. And I'm sure he's borrowing it from somewhere else, but he said his dad used to say, you're going to fall in life, try to fall forward, right? So for me, I try to fall forward. Some people left. You might be one of them, right? And I think there's some people who just left and they're never going to come back because it's like Pensare Basketball is like the cult of Scottie, and, this guy's just unhinged and he tells people to go fuck themselves. I get it. I totally do. And to those people, I really can't change their mind. And I can't really invest myself in doing that. I think there are some people, though, that did stick around, even if they thought I wasn't doing the right thing. And I value the fact that a lot of those people will say, you've really grown over the last few years. Like, even if they didn't necessarily even have an objection to what I was doing, because let's just be honest, anything you do on the internet, there's always going to be an audience for and an audience against it. Like, yelling at callers and telling them that they're idiots probably isn't for you, but it is for some people. Like, it's great entertainment for some people. And even those people will come back and say, it's been really cool to see how much you've calmed down. But the truth is, I couldn't have calmed down then because I needed to go through this entire process of discovering who I was, going through. And again, I'm 37 years old. I'm not an 18-year-old or 19-year-old where I can even excuse my behavior to say, well, hormones, adolescence, et cetera, et cetera. No, but people grow at different times in different situations. I grew up very, very fast, unfortunately. In my teens, I grew up extremely fast. And the fact that I had a job through high school and the fact that I went through some very adult things kind of made me think that I was just adult in all things. And that's just not the truth. I'm not adult in all things. I'm not adult when it comes to controlling my emotions. I'm not adult when it comes to regulating my emotions. I'm not adult when it comes to organizing my time. Like, there's a lot of things about me that are very childish. And it's taken a really long time to get to that point where I'm like, yes, you did, bury both your parents by the time you were 20. And yes, you did, very seriously plan your financial future. And yes, you have, a lot of wisdom and perspective that people your age typically didn't have, but also you have a lot of growing up to do, friend, and do it. And this channel has been a really fantastic opportunity to explore that for me, at least. Right. So, LOL, sorry, the community felt like 2K with toxicity wasn't a comment about Rob if you had bad takes when the trolls came, not a thing to reflect. Yeah. Andrew saying the fan base was kind of divided around Scottie's first and second year. Well, ain't that the truth? Absolutely. But something that I really value about Darko is the thing that I was alluding to earlier about the congruency thing, right? Challenging people not to become robots, not to become what you need them to be, but rather who they need to become themselves. I don't know Scottie Barnes personally, but nothing that I've ever heard about him, no story that I've heard from, people who are close to him has ever made me think that he took a lot of interest in like playwrights and the opera and reading, Heidegger and shit like that, right? When you're a pro athlete, your days are booked. You miss a lot. You miss a lot. So it's important to have people in your life who can teach you all that stuff. It's important to have people in your life who can guide your interests away from NBA 2K and Twitch streams. And I think Darko has been that guy. He's been like a huge catalyst. And to the point of like neuroplasticity and prefrontal cortex development from the neuroscience world, Scottie's 24 years old right now. His brain won't even be fully formed until 25. And you have people who've written the obituary on his career like 3 years ago. You don't know what this guy can be. You really don't. I promise you, you don't. And again, there's certain people where like maybe it's okay to write them off a little bit early. They just don't have any star upside. If you go top 4 in the NBA draft and you were picked by Masai Ujiri and the draft is like a great draft, you definitely have star potential until further notice. Like you have superstar potential until further notice, right? And so, a lot of people last year, Scottie's efficiency dipped from a lot of areas. But I really do think, like when I watch Nafisa Collier play basketball, when I watch Alyssa Thomas play basketball, I'm just like, holy shit, man. Put some pieces around this dude. He can be an MVP candidate. Like he truly can. Like Raptors Insider, I think they do this season stat projection every single year. They projected Scottie to average 21 points, 9 rebounds, and like close to 8 assists this year. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, bro, that's like all NBA. Like, what are we talking about? Like, we just sneeze at that. We scoff at that. We're just like, oh, whatever, I posted this kind of troll comment. It wasn't really a troll comment. It was like supposed to be a little bit funny. And I said, breaking news, Scottie Barnes is working really hard, et cetera. And the people are going to have to stay on that side, et cetera. And a lot of the comments were really disturbing, actually, to me. There was a lot of people just saying, like, okay, so I'll read this out. Scottie Barnes is working incredibly hard this offseason and will be, quote, whooping ass and taking names, quote, end quote, all season long. Sources close to the situation tell ESPN that, quote, the idiots on Twitter won't know what hit them, end quote, and that they'll need to, quote, stay on that side, end quote, until once the season rolls around in 15 days. Now, hopefully, the fact that I wrote from Woj lets people know that this is obviously a troll tweet, but I don't think people necessarily did. And then people said, I'll gladly stay on this side. We'll see how this ages. Expectations of Scottie this year. This LeBron tweet, which never gets old. Melissa saying, sigh, I hear this every year. So criticism is warranted. Just come in and let your game improvement speak for you. And it's just like, you would not be able to tell from some of these comments that this dude went from quote unquote 0-level scorer to a rookie of the year to an all-star. Like you just wouldn't tell, So the progress isn't like these loud progressions, like Anthony Edwards last year going to like super high volume 40% 3-point shooting. But there was a lot of work that needed to be done on Scottie's game. Fully. There's a lot of work. There was maturity off the court, on the court, there's defense, there's understanding angles, understanding his teammates. This is always going to be that type of star. This is always going to be the Jokic, Nafisa Collier type of star. It's not going to be the LeBron James, Michael Jordan solo star who just automatically lifts you to 40 wins. But in a winning context, I can't think of a contender that couldn't use this guy as their starting 3. I really can't. Like, there's not one team, Like, right now, I think if we could drop Shai on this team, we become a contender overnight, right? 100%. But if I could drop Scottie Barnes onto the Minnesota Timberwolves, I would say the same thing about them. I'm not saying Shai is equal to Scottie. I'm not. But that's kind of the point. Like, if I could drop him onto the Denver Nuggets as their starting small forward, I would immediately put them as title favorites. If I could drop him onto the Cleveland Cavaliers, I mean, any contender, he lifts them to, like, any fringe 50 win team, he takes you to, you're better than the OKC Thunder with this guy. And that's the thing. You need to have a team that's capable of winning like 40 games, and then he can take you to the championship. I believe. That's what I believe. But I don't think he's ever going to be the type of player, well, at least not early in his career, that you just put like rookies and G League players around him and he's just going to be great. I don't think last year was an indictment of him at all. And I think this year is going to be a big, big coming out party for him. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to, doing lives and content and, something to think about with the Raptors extensions going forward. Will they continue to keep that 2030 cap space vacant? We'll see. We don't get to know everything they go through unless they share it. Family gets sick, drama, kids on top of that. Well, it's worth noting Scottie had a kid right before the Raptors season last year. Remember that? It's kind of stressful when you're 23 having a kid, Not insecure. You were arrogant in the Raptors Facebook group and you've been arrogant in all of your chats on this channel. Me? Oh, James. Oh, Lord. You think you're smarter than everyone just because you're 70. Oh, man. Chat beef. Chat beef. Y'all, it's 12:54 a.m. Go to sleep. Don't beef. Count sheep. I'll talk to y'all later. Have a great one. Enjoy.